I lost everything. But she'll lose more.
The first plate I sent out that night was perfect. Pan-seared duck fillet, cherry gastrique, roasted fingerlings arranged like little soldiers around the edge. I'd practiced this dish 100 times, dreamed about it for 2 years while scraping together every dollar to open the hearth. My hands didn't shake as I wiped the rim clean and slid it across the pass. "Order up," I called to the empty dining room. That should have been my first clue. I'm Nick Harlan, and I'd just opened the restaurant I'd been planning since culinary school. 46 seats, open kitchen, exposed brick walls that I'd pointed myself during the renovation. Every detail perfect, from the Edison bulb fixtures to the reclaimed wood tables. This was supposed to be my night, my family's night. The reservation book showed 12 confirmed guests. My wife Lila had organized the whole thing. My parents, my brother Mason and his wife, Lila's mother Judith, a few close friends. Nothing fancy, just the people who mattered most, sharing the meal I'd been perfecting for months. At 7:30, I checked my phone. No messages. By 8 o'clock, I was pacing behind the line while my sous chef, Harry Boone, watched me with those sharp eyes of hers. Harry was 5'0" of pure kitchen attitude, all black hair and tattoos. The kind of cook who could butcher a whole pig and plate a perfect amuse-bouche in the same hour. "Maybe they're running late," she said, but her voice had that careful tone people use when they're trying not to say what they're really thinking. "Yeah, maybe." I pulled out my phone again. Still nothing. At 8:15, my phone finally buzzed. A text from Lila. "We need to discuss the restaurant. Can't make it tonight." That was it. No explanation, no apology. Just a casual dismissal of the most important night of my professional life. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Around me, the hearth hummed with potential energy. The oven's at perfect temperature. Wine glasses polished to crystal clarity. Every surface gleaming. All dressed up, with nowhere to go. My phone rang. Mason, my older brother, the golden boy who'd never failed at anything in his charmed life. "Nick, hey, listen. Let me guess. You can't make it either." "Look, it's complicated." Lila called and said there were some issues with the health department. Something about permits not being filed correctly. She thought it would be better if we waited until everything was sorted out. I felt something cold settle in my chest. What issues? What permits? I don't know the details, man. You know I don't understand restaurant stuff. But Lila seemed pretty concerned, and she knows about business. She knows about marketing. She's never run a restaurant in her life. Come on, Nick. Don't be like this. We're just trying to be supportive. Supportive. I tasted the word like spoiled milk. You know what would be supportive? Showing up, like you promised, like family does. We'll reschedule, okay? Maybe next weekend, when everything's... I hung up. Harry was pretending not to listen, but in a kitchen this size, privacy was impossible. She kept herself busy checking inventory, giving me space to process what had just happened. My family had stood me up, all of them, on opening night. I walked to the front of the restaurant and looked out at the empty tables, each one set with care, each one representing hours of planning and dreaming. The candles I'd lit an hour ago had burned down to stubs. My phone buzzed again. Another text, this one from my mother. "So sorry, honey. Got caught up with something. Rain check?" Then another from Dad. "Mason explained about the permit problems. We'll come by when it's all sorted out." And one from my mother-in-law, Judith. "Lila thought it best we wait. You understand." I understood, all right. I understood that my wife had poisoned them against me before I'd even had a chance to fail on my own. I typed out a group message to all of them. "Anyone who didn't show up tonight is out. Pass it on." Before I could second-guess myself, I hit send. Then I turned off my phone, pulled out the SIM card, and dropped it in the trash. "Harry," I called, "we're closing early tonight." She nodded and started shutting down her station. She didn't ask questions. That's why I'd hired her. Harry understood that sometimes the best thing you can do is keep your mouth shut and your knives sharp. I spent the next hour cleaning every surface, storing every ingredient, making sure the hearth was perfect for tomorrow. Because there would be a tomorrow. There would be customers who actually wanted to eat my food, who appreciated what I was trying to build here. My family could go to heck. The next morning, I bought a new phone with a new number. I didn't give it to anyone except Harry and the handful of suppliers who needed to reach me. If Lila wanted to discuss the restaurant, she could come in person. For 3 days, I threw myself into prep work. I refined my menu, trained my small staff, made sure every detail was perfect. The hearth officially opened to the public on Thursday night, and we served 68 covers to strangers who appreciated good food and paid their bills without drama. I was starting to think I'd overreacted about the family thing. Maybe this was better, cleaner. I could build my reputation on merit instead of obligation. Then, on Sunday morning, everything went to heck. I was in early, as usual, breaking down a case of duck fillets for the week ahead. Harry was due in at 10, the rest of the crew at noon. The morning prep time was sacred to me. Just me, my knives, and the quiet satisfaction of perfect knife work. My phone rang. Unknown number. The hearth, this is Nick. Mr. Harlan, this is Janet Morrison from the health department. We've received a complaint about your establishment. We need to schedule an inspection immediately. Sluggish. Not enough to cut myself, but enough to ruin the fillet I was working on. What kind of complaint? Food poisoning. 2 separate individuals reported severe gastrointestinal distress after dining at your restaurant Friday night. We take these reports very seriously. Resisting. Friday night. I remembered Friday night perfectly. We'd served 42 covers. Everything had gone smoothly. No complaints, no returns, no problems. Every plate that went out had been perfect. Can you tell me who made the complaint? I'm not at liberty to share that information. Can you be available for inspection tomorrow at 9 a.m.? Of course. My voice sounded steady, professional. Inside, I was calculating. 2 complaints meant my insurance would spike. Word would get around. In a town this size, rumors traveled faster than facts. We'll also need to review your HACCP logs, temperature records, and supplier documentation. Remodeling. Everything's current and properly maintained. I'm sure it is, Mr. Harlan. We'll see you tomorrow. After she hung up, I stood in my empty kitchen holding a ruined piece of duck and trying to figure out how 2 people could get food poisoning from food that had never made anyone sick. That's when I decided to call Denny Ross. Denny was a private investigator who'd helped me out during the divorce proceedings of my previous business partner 3 years ago. Ex-cop, chain smoker, the kind of guy who knew where all the bodies were buried in a town like ours. If someone was playing games with my restaurant, Denny would figure out who and why. He answered on the second ring. Ross Investigations. Denny, it's Nick Harlan. I need your help. Ross looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for small-town private investigator. Rumpled suit, coffee-stained tie, eyes that had seen too much and believed too little. He sat across from me in the hearth's dining room the next morning, smoking a cigarette despite the no-smoking laws, because Denny Ross didn't care about rules that didn't make sense to him. So let me get this straight, he said, exhaling smoke toward the ceiling. Your wife organizes a family dinner, then cancels last minute with some story about permit problems. 3 days later, you get hit with food poisoning complaints from customers you can't identify. That's right. And you think these things are connected. I think my wife is trying to sabotage my restaurant. Denny nodded slowly. Why? That was the question I'd been avoiding. Because she never wanted me to open this place. She thought I should stick with catering, keep it small, keep it safe. When I mortgaged everything to buy this building, she said I was being reckless. Were you? Resigned. Probably. But sometimes you have to risk everything to get what you want. And what do you want, Nick? I gestured around the dining room. This, a place that's mine, a reputation built on my food, not someone else's vision of what I should be doing. Denny crushed out his cigarette on a bread plate. Tell me about Friday night. Every detail you can remember. I walked him through the entire evening. Every table, every order, every interaction. Friday had been busy but smooth. The kind of night that made me remember why I'd gotten into this business. Good food, happy customers, everything clicking. Security cameras? Denny asked. Just the one at the front door. Budget's tight. Need to see the footage. Also your reservation book, credit card receipts, anything that can identify who was here Friday night. While I gathered the paperwork, Denny made phone calls. I caught fragments of conversation, names I didn't recognize, references to public records, the kind of bureaucratic archaeology that private investigators specialized in. The health inspector arrived at 9 sharp. Janet Morrison was exactly what you'd expect from someone who spent her days looking for violations. Middle-aged, humorless, armed with a clipboard and a bad attitude. She went through my kitchen like she was searching for evidence of war crimes. Every temperature log, scrutinized. Every supplier invoice, questioned. Every surface, swabbed for testing. Your HACCP documentation is thorough, she admitted grudgingly, after 2 hours of inspection. I take food safety seriously. The complainants described symptoms consistent with Salmonella or Campylobacter. Onset within 12 hours of dining, duration of 3 to 4 days. What did they order? I can't share specific details of their complaints, but Denny could. By Tuesday afternoon, he'd identified both complainants through public records and social media cross-referencing. Sarah Chen and Michael Torres, both in their 20s, both with social media profiles full of food photos and restaurant check-ins. Here's the interesting part, Denny said, spreading printouts across my desk. Neither of them has any photos from Friday night. No check-ins at the hearth, no food pics, nothing. But look at this. He showed me a Venmo transaction from Saturday morning. Sarah Chen had received $200 from an account registered to LC Consulting. LC? I asked. Lila Callahan, your wife's maiden name. She registered the business account 3 months ago. He pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Lila had paid people to file false food poisoning reports against my restaurant. My own wife was trying to destroy everything I'd worked for. There's more, Denny said. Michael Torres received the same amount, same account, same day. And both of them filed their complaints within an hour of each other Sunday morning. Can we prove they were never here? Working on it. Your door camera might have caught something, but the angle's not great. I'm checking other cameras in the area, see if we can track their movements Friday night. I stared at the Venmo screenshots until my eyes burned. $200 each. That's what my marriage was worth to Lila. $400 and the destruction of my dreams. What's the next step? I asked. We gather more evidence, build a case. Then you decide what you want to do about it. What I wanted to do was burn down everything Lila cared about, starting with her precious reputation, and working my way through her social circle until she understood exactly what it felt like to have someone you trust destroy your life. But I didn't say that to Denny. Instead, I nodded and told him to keep digging. That evening, I stayed late at the restaurant, working on inventory and trying to process what I'd learned. Harry found me there at 10 p.m., sitting in the dark dining room with a bottle of bourbon and a calculator. Rough day? She asked. My wife paid people to file fake food poisoning complaints against us. Harry poured herself a drink without asking. That's messed up, even for a divorce. Discharged. We're not getting divorced. At least, I didn't think we were. You are now. She was right, of course. There was no coming back from this. Lila had declared war, and I'd been too naive to see it coming. What are you going to do? Harry asked. I took a long drink and felt the bourbon burn away the last of my illusions about marriage and family and people who were supposed to have your back. I'm going to win. The security footage from Friday night told the story I'd expected. I watched it 3 times with Denny, fast-forwarding through 8 hours of customers entering and leaving the hearth. Sarah Chen and Michael Torres never appeared. Not once. They were never here, I said. Nope, but proving a negative is tricky in court. We need more. Density Denny had been busy over the past week. The LC Consulting account had made other payments, small amounts to various people, all in the past month. A pattern was emerging. Your wife's been planning this for a while, he said, spreading bank records across my desk. Look at these transactions. $50 here, $100 there. She's been building a network. A network of what? People willing to lie about your restaurant. I can be the worst of time to think about it. People in check the place is comfortable and courted. She's been building Destructed in the same past month, and she wanted to fix this office of the network threw in. The network of what? She started fundance of clothes to be appeared of my firely caller. 15 years like the lost of the carbon as well. What we did it, until they've lost of March's Keller. I want to take this video. I think it want. She's also trying the network of time, and she should have the bottom of Denny to untried them and partner around did. I was never moved in this destruction. There's nothing likely in tell Jewing to another fear. And she's been lie about your restaurant. Bad reviews, complaints to the health department, maybe worse if this escalates. I studied the names on the payment list. Most I didn't recognize, but a few made my stomach clench. Jenny Walsh, who'd been Lila's college roommate. Brad Morrison, who worked at the same marketing firm where Lila used to be employed. People who knew me, who'd eaten at my table, who'd smiled to my face while plotting behind my back. There's something else, Denny said. Your brother Mason made a deposit of $5,000 last Tuesday. Same day your wife made her first payment to the fake food poisoning victims. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Mason wasn't just going along with Lila's plan. He was funding it. Why? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Best guess? Your wife convinced him you're unstable. Dangerous, maybe. That the restaurant's going to fail anyway, and it's better to force you out now before you lose everything. Or maybe he just wants me to fail. Denny lit another cigarette. Family's complicated. Shameful. Not anymore, it isn't. I called Lila for the first time since opening night. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice carefully neutral. Hello, Nick. Wilmington. We need to talk. I agree. Can you come by the house tomorrow evening, around 7? Oh, the Victorian I'd bought and renovated, where I'd planned to raise kids and grow old. Now, it felt like enemy territory. I'll be there. Good. We have a lot to discuss. The line went dead. I sat in my empty restaurant, surrounded by the dreams I'd built and the evidence of how thoroughly they were being dismantled, and tried to figure out what I was going to say to the woman who'd promised to love and support me through everything. The next evening, I drove to what used to be my home. Lila had changed the locks. My key didn't work. I had to ring the doorbell like a stranger. She answered, wearing the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. Her dark hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like she was dressed for a date. Come in, she said. Would you like some wine? I'd like some answers. She led me to the living room, where she'd set out a bottle of expensive Cabernet and 2 glasses. Everything about the scene felt staged, like she'd rehearsed this conversation. I know you're angry, she began. Angry? I laughed, and the sound came out bitter. Lila, you paid people to file false reports against my restaurant. You tried to destroy my business with lies. I tried to save you from yourself. By sabotaging me? By showing you that you're not ready for this. Nick, you mortgaged everything for that restaurant. Our house, our savings, our future. What happens when it fails? It's not going to fail. It already is. Do you know how many restaurants close in their first year? 80%. The odds are against you, and instead of accepting that, you're doubling down on a fantasy. I stared at her, trying to recognize the woman I'd married in this cold, calculating stranger. So you decided to make sure I'd fail. I decided to force you to face reality before you destroyed us both. There is no us, Lila. There hasn't been since you chose to betray me instead of support me. Sipped her wine, perfectly composed. I've filed for divorce. You'll be served tomorrow. I want half of everything, including the restaurant. You'll get what you're legally entitled to, nothing more. We'll see. I stood to leave, but she wasn't finished. Your friends agree with me, by the way, about the restaurant being a mistake. What friends? Mason, obviously, but also Tom and Jennifer, the Hendersons. Pretty much everyone who cares about you. They're all worried about your judgment lately. Tom and Jennifer Reeves had been our closest friends for 5 years. We'd vacationed together, celebrated birthdays, been best man and maid of honor at each other's weddings. The Hendersons lived next door and had helped me move furniture when I was renovating the restaurant space. You've been talking to them about our marriage? I've been asking for support during a difficult time. They understand that I'm trying to help you, even if you can't see it yet. The casual way she said it, like destroying my reputation was an act of kindness, made me want to put my fist through the wall. Stay away from my restaurant, Lila, and tell Mason to keep his money. I don't need his help to fail. You don't need anyone's help for that. I left her sitting in our former living room, drinking wine and planning my destruction, with the same attention to detail she'd once brought to planning our anniversary dinners. The next morning, I was served with divorce papers at the restaurant. Harry watched the process server leave, then poured me a cup of coffee without comment. "How bad is it?" she asked finally. I scanned the legal documents. Lila was asking for half of everything: the house, the business, even my equipment and recipes. She wanted alimony, claiming she'd sacrificed her career to support my unstable business ventures. "She wants to own me," I said. "What are you going to do?" "The papers and put them in my desk drawer. I'm going to make her regret ever meeting me." The plan started with a phone call to Tom Reeves. Tom and I had been friends since college. He'd been the best man at my wedding. I'd been the best man at his. If Lila had turned him against me, I needed to know how and why. "Nick!" He sounded genuinely happy to hear from me. "How's the restaurant business treating you?" "It's been interesting. Listen, I was hoping we could grab a beer sometime. Catch up." "Absolutely. Jennifer's been asking about you and Lila. We should all get together soon." So he didn't know about the divorce yet. That was useful information. "How about tonight? Murphy's Tavern, around 8? "Perfect. See you there." Was the kind of dive bar where locals went to drink away their problems without judgment. Dark wood, darker lighting, and a bartender who minded his own business. I got there early and claimed a corner booth where we could talk without being overheard. Tom arrived 15 minutes late, looking like he'd come straight from his law office. Expensive suit, tired eyes, the slight paunch that came from too many client dinners. He slid into the booth across from me and signaled the bartender for 2 beers. "So," he said, "how's married life treating you?" That's what I wanted to talk about. Lila and I are getting divorced. His face went through a series of expressions: surprise, concern, careful neutrality. "I'm sorry to hear that, Nick. What happened?" "She's been sabotaging my restaurant, paying people to file false complaints, trying to force me to fail so she can claim I'm unstable." Tom was quiet for a long moment, turning his beer bottle in his hands. "That's a serious accusation." Trembling. "I have proof. Bank records, Venmo transactions, everything." "Nick," he looked uncomfortable. "Lila came to see Jennifer a few weeks ago. She was really upset, worried about you. She said you'd been acting paranoid, making wild accusations, blaming her for normal business problems." The pieces clicked into place. Lila hadn't just been undermining my restaurant. She'd been undermining my credibility with our friends, setting up a narrative where I was the unstable one, and she was the concerned wife trying to help. "What exactly did she tell you?" "That you'd accused her of sabotaging your opening night. That you'd changed your phone number and cut off contact with your family. That you were drinking too much and making increasingly erratic business decisions." Relinquith. Every word was technically true, but stripped of context, they painted a picture of a man having a breakdown. Lila had been very clever. "And you believed her?" "I believed that she was scared and didn't know what to do. Jennifer spent 3 hours talking her through it, trying to figure out how we could help." "Her leave me, you mean?" "Help both of you. Nick, if you're having problems, there are people who care about you. You don't have to go through this alone." I pulled out my phone and showed him the Venmo screenshots Denny had uncovered. "Look at these transactions. She paid 2 people to file fake food poisoning reports against my restaurant." Tom studied the images, his lawyer's mind processing the evidence. This could be explained other ways. Maybe she was helping friends who'd actually gotten sick, covering their medical expenses. "They were never at my restaurant, Tom. I have security footage proving it." "Then why would she—" He stopped, understanding dawning on his face. "Jesus, Nick, if this is real, it's real, and it's just the beginning. She's building a case that I'm mentally unstable, so she can take everything in the divorce." Tom finished his beer in one long swallow. What do you need from me? I need you to stop helping her destroy me. We weren't trying to. You were giving her emotional support while she was actively sabotaging my business. You were validating her story that I'm the problem. That makes you part of it, whether you meant to be or not. He was quiet for a long time, staring at the evidence on my phone. What are you going to do? I'm going to expose her. Publicly. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person she really is. Nick, be careful. If you're wrong about any of this, Merc, I'm not wrong. But if you are, you'll destroy your own reputation. And if you're right, you'll destroy hers. Either way, someone's life gets ruined. She started this war, Tom. I'm just going to finish it. I left him sitting in the booth staring at his empty beer bottle and probably wondering how he'd gotten caught in the middle of someone else's marriage falling apart. The next step was harder. I needed to confront the people who'd taken Lila's money to lie about my restaurant. Denny had tracked down addresses for both Sarah Chen and Michael Torres, but approaching them directly was risky. If they reported the contact to Lila, she'd know I was onto her scheme. Instead, I decided to let them come to me. I had Harry create fake social media profiles and reach out to both of them, posing as a food blogger interested in their food poisoning experience at the hearth. The message was carefully crafted, sympathetic, outraged on their behalf, asking for details about their ordeal. Sarah Chen took the bait within hours. She agreed to meet the blogger at a coffee shop downtown, eager to share her story with someone who would publicize how badly she'd been treated. Harry showed up with a hidden recording device and a list of questions designed to expose the lies. It was terrible, Sarah told her, launching into a detailed account of symptoms she'd never experienced, from food she'd never eaten. I was sick for days. I couldn't keep anything down. You order at the hearth? Harry asked. The duck. It tasted off, but I didn't want to make a scene. Did you mention it to your server? No, I should have. Maybe other people wouldn't have gotten sick. Harry nodded sympathetically. It must have been expensive, too. Did they offer to comp the meal when you complained? I didn't complain there. I was too sick to go back. But you did file a complaint with the health department? Yes. I felt like I had to protect other people. Interview went on for 20 minutes, with Sarah elaborating on her fictional illness and expressing concern for other potential victims. She never mentioned being paid to file the complaint, but she also couldn't provide any proof she'd actually been to the restaurant. No receipt, no photos, no memory of specific details about the space or the service. When Harry asked if she'd be willing to go on record with her story, Sarah suddenly became nervous. I don't know if I want my name attached to this. What if the restaurant tries to sue me? Why would they sue you if you're telling the truth? Maybe we should leave it alone. I'm feeling better now and I don't want any trouble. Harry pressed a little harder, and Sarah's story began to fall apart. She couldn't remember which day of the week she'd dined at the hearth, couldn't describe her server, couldn't even remember how she'd heard about the restaurant in the first place. Someone recommended it, she said finally. A friend. What friend? I can't remember. Look, I have to go. She left the coffee shop in a hurry, probably already calling Lila to report that someone was asking questions about her complaint. That was fine. I wanted Lila to know I was fighting back. The recording Harry had made wouldn't hold up in court, but it didn't need to. It was enough to prove that Sarah Chen's story was fabricated, and combined with the financial records Denny had uncovered, it painted a clear picture of fraud. Now, I just needed to decide what to do with the evidence. The Coastal Food and Wine Festival happened every September, drawing thousands of visitors to our little town for 3 days of tastings, cooking demonstrations, and local restaurant showcases. I'd signed up to participate months ago, back when I thought my family would be supporting my new venture instead of trying to destroy it. Now, the festival represented an opportunity. Lila would be there. She'd helped organize it for the past 3 years, and her marketing background made her valuable to the event coordinators. Mason would be there too, along with most of our mutual friends and half the town's social circle. Everyone who'd been whispering about my unstable behavior and failing restaurant would be gathered in one place. Perfect. I spent 2 weeks preparing for the festival, but not in the way other restaurateurs were preparing. While they focused on menu planning and ingredient sourcing, I worked with Denny to compile a comprehensive dossier of Lila's sabotage campaign. Bank records showing payments to fake complainants. Screenshots of social media profiles proving they'd never been to my restaurant. Phone records showing coordination between Lila, Mason, and the people who'd filed false reports. Even recordings of Sarah Chen contradicting her own complaint. Harry thought I was losing my mind. "You're going to destroy her in front of the whole town," she said, as we loaded equipment into the van for the festival setup. "You sure you want to go nuclear like this?" "She went nuclear first. I'm just returning fire. What if it backfires? What if people think you're the crazy one for airing your dirty laundry in public? Then, I'll know where I stand with this town." The festival's Friday morning in Riverside Park, with each restaurant claiming a booth space and setting up their equipment. The hearth spot was between Tony's Pizza and the new sushi place. Prime real estate with good foot traffic and visibility. I watched Lila across the park, directing volunteers and checking vendor setups with her clipboard and headset. She looked completely in her element. Organized, authoritative, respected. By Sunday evening, that reputation would be in ruins. Saturday was the main event day. Thousands of people wandered between booths, sampling food and buying wine, enjoying the perfect September weather. The Hearth's booth was busy all day. My duck sliders were a hit, and I sold out of everything by 4 p.m. But I wasn't really focused on the food service. I was watching the crowd, identifying targets, waiting for the right moment. That moment came during the wine competition awards ceremony at 6 p.m. The entire festival crowd gathered around the main stage to hear the results, with local dignitaries and event organizers taking turns at the microphone. Lila was scheduled to present the award for Best New Restaurant, an award I had no chance of winning, since the voting had been rigged against me from the start. When she took the stage, I was ready. I'd set up a small PA system at my booth, ostensibly for taking orders and making announcements. But it was powerful enough to carry across the park, and I'd positioned it to face the main stage. As Lila began her presentation, I activated the system and started playing the recording Harry had made of Sarah Chen. It was terrible. I was sick for days. I couldn't keep anything down. His voice faltered as she heard the recording, but she tried to continue with her presentation. The duck. It tasted off, but I didn't want to make a scene. Now people in the crowd where the sound was coming from. I stepped up to my microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Nick Harlan from the Hearth. What you're hearing is a recording of someone who filed a false food poisoning complaint against my restaurant. Someone who was paid $200 to lie about food she never ate." The crowd was fully focused on me now, the awards ceremony forgotten. Lila stood frozen at the main stage microphone, her face pale. I continued. "The person who paid for these false complaints is my wife, Lila Harlan, who you see on the main stage. She's been running a systematic campaign to destroy my restaurant, using lies, fraud, and the support of people who should have known better." "Nick, stop this," Lila's voice carried across the park through the main PA system. "I have bank records," I announced, holding up a folder. "Venmo transactions, phone records. Everything proving that my wife paid multiple people to file false complaints against the Hearth. She convinced my own brother to fund her sabotage campaign. She turned our friends against me by lying about my mental state." Silent now, riveted by the public destruction of a marriage playing out in real time. "Sarah Chen was paid $200 to claim she got food poisoning from duck she never ordered, at a restaurant she never visited. Michael Torres was paid the same amount for the same lie. Both complaints were filed within an hour of each other, both funded by my wife's business account." I played more of the recording, letting Sarah's contradictions speak for themselves. Then I switched to a different audio file, a phone conversation Denny had recorded between Mason and one of Lila's co-conspirators, discussing the timing of additional complaints. "My own family," I said into the microphone, "decided I should fail. They decided my dreams weren't worth supporting, that my marriage wasn't worth preserving, that my reputation wasn't worth protecting. So they set out to destroy all three." Liza finally found her voice. "He's having a breakdown," she said through the main PA system. "This is exactly the kind of paranoid behavior I've been trying to get help for. Paranoid? I laughed, and the sound carried across the park. Let me show you paranoid. Activate a laptop connected to my PA system and projected bank records onto a white screen I'd set up behind my booth. Every transaction was visible to the crowd. Dates, amounts, recipient names. LC Consulting, I announced. My wife's business account. $200 to Sarah Chen on August 15th. $200 to Michael Torres the same day. $50 to Jenny Walsh for posting a negative review she admitted she made up. $100 to Brad Morrison for spreading rumors about health department problems that don't exist. The crowd was getting restless, some people pulling out phones to record the spectacle, others starting to move away from what was clearly becoming a very personal and ugly confrontation. But I wasn't done. Mason Harlan, I said, focusing on my brother who was standing near the main stage, looking like he wanted to disappear. My brother, $5,000 deposited into Lila's account to fund this campaign. Dirty money to destroy his own family. Mason started walking toward me, his face red with anger. Nick, that's enough. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm exposing the truth. There's a difference. You're having a public meltdown. This is exactly what Lila was talking about. What Lila was talking about was a carefully constructed lie designed to justify her betrayal. But you knew that, didn't you, Mason? You helped plan it. By now, a crowd had gathered around my booth, drawn by the drama and the shocking revelations. I could see Tom and Jennifer Reeves in the crowd, looking stunned. The Hendersons were there too, along with dozens of other people who'd been part of our social circle. I trusted all of you, I said, addressing the crowd directly. I thought family meant something. I thought marriage meant something. I thought friendship meant supporting each other through difficult times, not sabotaging each other for sport. Lila had left the main stage and was pushing through the crowd toward me, her face a mask of fury. You're destroying both of us, she hissed when she reached my booth. I'm destroying you, I corrected. I'm saving myself. No one will ever trust you again after this display. Manjle, one should ever trust you again after what you've done. Manslaughter. She looked around at the crowd, at the faces of people who'd respected her an hour ago, and were now staring at her like she was a stranger. This isn't over, she said. Yes, it is. She turned and walked away, pushing through the crowd that parted to let her pass. Mason followed her, shooting me a look of pure hatred as he left. I turned off my PA system and started packing up my equipment. The crowd gradually dispersed, people talking in small groups about what they'd witnessed. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with disgust at the public spectacle I'd created. Harry helped me load the van in silence. When we were done, she finally spoke. Well, she said, that was something. That was justice. That was nuclear warfare. Seriously, that's what justice looks like. As we drove away from the festival, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The truth was finally out there. Everyone knew what Lila had done, what Mason had done, what kind of people they really were. My marriage was over. My relationship with my brother was destroyed, and half the town probably thought I was insane. But my restaurant was clean. My reputation was restored, and my enemies were exposed. It was a fair trade. The aftermath of the festival was swift and brutal. By Monday morning, the story had spread throughout the town and beyond. Social media had amplified the spectacle, with multiple videos of my public confrontation with Lila circulating on Facebook and Instagram. The local newspaper ran a front-page story with the headline, Restaurant Owner Exposes Wife's Sabotage Campaign at Food Festival. Some people called me a hero for standing up to betrayal. Others called me unstable for airing my private business in such a public way. But everyone was talking about the hearth, and for the first time since opening, it was positive attention. Reservations started pouring in. People wanted to eat at the restaurant that had been at the center of such dramatic revelations. They wanted to judge for themselves whether my food was worth the scandal surrounding it. By Tuesday, we were booked solid for 2 weeks. Lila, meanwhile, had become a pariah. The marketing firm where she'd worked part-time fired her immediately, citing damage to their reputation. The charitable organizations where she'd volunteered asked her to step down from her positions. Her friends stopped returning her calls. Mason fared slightly better, but his real estate business took a hit as clients questioned his judgment and integrity. The $5,000 he'd given Lila to fund her sabotage campaign became public knowledge. And in a small town, that kind of betrayal wasn't easily forgotten or forgiven. I should have felt satisfied. My enemies were defeated, my restaurant was thriving, and justice had been served. But as the days passed, I realized that revenge, even successful revenge, leaves you empty in ways you don't expect. The divorce proceedings moved quickly after the festival. Lila's lawyer advised her to settle out of court rather than face additional public scrutiny. She agreed to take only her legal minimum from our assets, foregoing any claim to the hearth or my equipment. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue criminal charges for the fraud she'd committed. It was a hollow victory. I kept everything I'd built, but I'd lost everything I'd once believed about love and loyalty and family. 3 weeks after the festival, Tom Reeves came to the hearth for dinner. He sat alone at the bar, ordered the duck I'd made famous, and waited until the dinner rush was over before asking to speak with me privately. "I owe you an apology," he said when we'd settled in a corner booth. "Jennifer and I both do. We should have seen what Lila was doing. You saw what she wanted you to see. She's very good at manipulation. Still, we should have trusted you more, questioned her story more. We've known you for years. We should have realized something was wrong with her version of events." I poured us both a drink from the bottle of bourbon I kept behind the bar. "You were trying to help a friend who seemed to be in crisis. I can't fault you for that. Can you forgive us for it?" I thought about that question for a long time. Tom and Jennifer had been manipulated, but they'd also been willing to believe the worst about me based on secondhand information. They'd chosen to support my wife's narrative without ever asking for my side of the story. "I can forgive you," I said finally, "but I can't forget. And I can't trust you the way I used to." Tom nodded sadly. "I understand. For what it's worth, Jennifer and I are getting divorced too. This whole situation made us realize we don't really know each other as well as we thought. If we could be so wrong about you and Lila, what else are we wrong about? Nationality of Lila's war. Another relationship destroyed by the ripple effects of betrayal and revenge. I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Don't be. Sometimes it takes a crisis to show you who people really are, including yourself. After Tom left, I sat alone in my restaurant, surrounded by the success I'd fought so hard to achieve. The dining room was empty, the kitchen was clean, and the silence was complete. I'd won. I'd exposed my enemies, saved my business, and emerged victorious from a war I never wanted to fight. But victory felt a lot like loneliness. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. "The Hearth, this is Nick." "Mr. Harlan, this is Detective Sarah Walsh with the State Police. We'd like to speak with you about some irregularities we've discovered in the food poisoning complaints filed against your restaurant." Blood went cold. "What kind of irregularities?" "The kind that suggest organized fraud. We've been investigating similar complaints filed against other restaurants in the region, and we believe there may be a pattern of coordinated false reporting. I've already resolved the situation with my wife. This goes beyond your wife, Mr. Harlan. We think she may have been part of a larger scheme targeting small restaurants for extortion. We'd like you to come in tomorrow morning to discuss what you know." After I hung up, I sat in the dark trying to process this new information. Lila's sabotage of my restaurant hadn't been personal. It had been part of a broader criminal enterprise. She'd been using the same tactics against other business owners, probably for months or years. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd loved and trusted, wasn't just a betrayer. She was a criminal. The next morning, I met with Detective Walsh and her partner at the State Police Barracks. They showed me evidence of similar schemes targeting restaurants across 3 counties. Fake complaints, paid false witnesses, coordinated attacks designed to force business owners into settlements or closure. "Your wife appears to have been a key organizer," Detective Walsh explained. "The LC Consulting account was used to fund attacks on at least a dozen establishments. We estimate the total damage at over $200,000. What happens now? We're preparing charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, racketeering. Your wife is looking at serious prison time." I thought about Lila sitting in a cell, paying the price for her crimes. A year ago, the idea would have horrified me. Now, it felt like the natural conclusion to the story she'd written with her choices. "Will you testify?" Detective Walsh asked. "Yes. It may get ugly. Defense attorneys will try to paint you as a vindictive ex-husband, making up stories for revenge. Let them try. I have evidence." The trial took place 6 months later. I testified for 3 hours, walking the jury through the timeline of Lila's sabotage campaign and the evidence Denny had uncovered. The prosecutor used bank records, recordings, and testimony from other victims to build an overwhelming case. Lila's defense attorney tried to portray her as a troubled woman, driven to desperate measures by a toxic marriage. But the evidence was too strong. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. She was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Mason, who'd been charged as a co-conspirator, received 2 years probation and a substantial fine. His real estate license was revoked, his business collapsed, and he moved away from town, rather than face the daily reminder of his disgrace. I watched the sentencing from the gallery, feeling nothing but emptiness as the judge pronounced Lila's fate. This was justice, but it wasn't satisfaction. It was just the end of a story that should have had a different ending. After the trial, I drove back to the hearth and found Harry waiting for me with a bottle of champagne. "Celebrating?" I asked. "Surviving," she corrected. "You've been through heck, boss. You came out the other side. That's worth acknowledging." We drank the champagne in a silence, two people who'd weathered. The restaurant around us was busy with the dinner prep, the familiar sounds of a kitchen getting ready for service. This was my life now: work, routine, the satisfaction of feeding people well. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd earned. "Any regrets?" Harry asked. I thought about that question as I watched my staff prepare for another evening of service. Did I regret exposing Lila at the festival? Did I regret the public spectacle, the destroyed relationships, the nuclear option I'd chosen when diplomacy might have worked? "No," I said finally. "She made her choices. I made mine. Everyone has to live with the consequences. Even you, especially me." The hearth thrived in the years that followed. My reputation as both a chef and a survivor drew customers from across the region, and food critics began to take notice of what I was building. I won awards, hired more staff, and eventually opened a second location in the next town over. I never remarried. I dated occasionally, but trust didn't come easily anymore, and I'd learned to be content with solitude. The restaurant was my family now, the staff my closest relationships, the work, my passion, and my purpose. 5 years after the trial, Lila was released from prison. I heard she'd moved to another state, taken a job under her maiden name, tried to build a new life away from the wreckage of her old one. I felt nothing when I learned this news. No anger, no satisfaction, no curiosity about what had become of her. She was a chapter in my story that had ended, a lesson learned about the difference between the people we think we know and the people they actually are. The last time I saw Mason was at our father's funeral 2 years ago. We stood on opposite sides of the grave, two brothers who'd become strangers, united only by grief for the man who'd raised us both. He tried to approach me after the service, but I walked away. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Tonight, as I write this in my office above the hearth, I can hear the sounds of dinner service below, orders being called, plates being plated, customers enjoying the food I've spent my life learning to prepare. It's a good sound, a sound of success earned through struggle and perseverance. I won the war Lila started, but the victory cost me everything I'd once believed about love and family and trust. In the end, I learned that sometimes the price of justice is the very thing you're fighting to protect. But I paid that price willingly, and I'd pay it again, because some things are worth fighting for, even if the fight changes you into someone you never expected to become. The reservation list for tonight is full. The kitchen is running smoothly, and my enemies are nothing but memories. That's enough. That has to be enough.